Hello and welcome. We are really excited today to have Dr. Lee Larson as our featured Spotlight Lumina Learning Practitioner here in the U.S. And this is especially dear to my heart because Laura has been around with us for so long. Gosh, Lee, when did you actually go through qualification?
I believe it was early 2012. So you need to give me a pen or something. It's been 10 years.
At least a pen, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Laura Lee comes from just a fantastic background in consumer goods and category management, and she's had a very interesting go. Pretty much every household item that's in your house, she has either worked for or with, and so doing her consulting, and she's a strategic advisor to many organizations. She's also one of the partners at the partnering group in the greater Chicago area. That's currently what she's doing. And I'd just like you to share a little bit, Laura Lee, about yourself and your company and just hop right in here.
Well, thank you. It's such a privilege. As you mentioned, I started my career in '87 with Kraft Foods and sales and kind of found my way into computers, believe it or not, way back when they were like 500 pounds. And I started teaching people how to use computers. And then I started getting into data and fact-based selling, which later turned into category management, as you said, which really was the majority of my 23 years in corporate America. But what I really loved was teaching. And so I'm not very good at many things, but I love teaching tennis to earn my college beer money way back in the day, and then teaching computers and teaching category management. And then I got introduced to emotional intelligence. And let's just say that the last 12 years of being on my own has been largely thanks to Lumina Spark and Lumina and you, Becky and Kate and the Lumina Learning team. It's been such a joy to have kind of shifted gears from the what skills like category management to how you can be an awesome leader. So that's a nutshell. You know, I could talk forever. So that's as I can do.
Oh, no, that's great. Yes. And I know you're very skilled at everything that you do. And Laura Lee has just blown me away personally with her methodology and her process around how she delivers what she does. She's able to go right to the top, to the senior level leadership teams, and just have an experience with them in a way that's brief and quick, but they dig down deep into the team. And she does this in a particular way, and I know she's going to share that on the call with us today. But Kate, I'm gonna bat it to you and let you. I know you have some specific questions for Laura Lee.
Absolutely. So, Laura Lee, can you share a few lines about your company and what you do?
Sure. The partnering group has been around. They actually are known as being sort of the jumpstart to this profession called category management. So I find it to be very ironic. It may not be as interesting to others as it is to me, but here I am 35 years later, spending my first year with the partnering group. But back in the late 80s, they came up with what was called the 8 steps of category management, blah, blah, blah. So they have a lot of ex-Procter and Gamble people, fantastic, smart people. I have loved working with some of their, they've introduced me to a lot of clients. That's been wonderful. And there are a few partners that I've just been having a great time collaborating with. My most, I think, interesting to this audience is, as Becky said, sometimes there's a recalcitrant or kind of a toxic person in a group, and it can happen certainly in this recent experience with the top leaders of this company, and it was really dragging them down. And so we came up with some qualitative, like, survey, if you will, where the peers each reviewed each other on a Likert scale, and some what skills like strategy, analysis, all that, and then also the supportive leadership skills. And this particular person was like a 1 in all of these areas and maybe a 3 or 4 in these, and it kind of gave them more of that opportunity to address what was going on head on, and then working with the team in private one-on-one confidential sessions to kind of customize a teamwork session. And then of course the ongoing part is the true key. So hopefully that was brief enough, but depending on the team, depending on the client, I mean, recently I was on stage at a national sales meeting, which was a joy. But my most passionate part is really helping individuals thrive and then helping the team together leverage strengths and thrive as a group. So
That's wonderful. That's great. Thank you, Laura Lee. Can you share something interesting about yourself? Maybe something unique that not everyone knows.
wow. Well, you know what? I came out of the closet in 1999, which was after many, many years of struggling. And so it's funny because I've worked for liquor companies. I've worked for, some really fun companies that they're like, wow, you're going to be such a great way to get to the gay consumer. And I'm like, yeah, I'm really not that cool. And I've been with my wife, Jeannie, for 11 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we hope, just about to move downtown on North Lakeshore Drive next to our wonderful church, Fourth Presbyterian, which we're both on session as leaders there. And it's about 4 blocks away. So I don't know if that's interesting, but it's certainly usually when people find out, they're either surprised or not surprised, but it's been a big part of my journey to learn how to be my true self. And I think Lumina Spark really helps people with that. So.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Laura Lee. Can you share some advice on leadership and team building?
Sure. I wrote my dissertation, can't believe I finished in 2009 while I was at Wrigley Mars, and Wrigley very kindly paid for that as I was head of their sales training department. And what we found out when Mars bought Wrigley, our engagement scores, they used the Gallup G12, and the scores of our 500 salespeople were really low. And we were all kind of surprised because we low-level people were kind of having fun together and going out for beers. But what we realized was it was the people at the top that were not really, I don't know, they were certainly not following Simon Sinek's, and Lumina Sparks principles. So my senior VP came to me and said, can your training team help us? And it just was so strange because it was at the time I was writing my dissertation on exceptional leadership and mentorship. And we got certified in insights discovery, and we rolled the instrument out and training for a whole year. And we came to find that it mattered a lot, to say the least. Our engagement scores almost went up 50%. And some of the leaders did get let go. It's not enough to make your number and be attractive and schmooze well and keep getting promoted. And that doesn't work very long because you're going to be found out, I guess. And so when people are open to emotional intelligence, awareness, change, continuous improvement, it can make a world of difference. And I think once people get on that journey as a leader, because we're all leaders, but you start to realize the impact you have on other people's lives. And I always like to tell people, especially at the top, do you know how many hundreds of dinner tables that you impact? If mom goes home after being with a bad boss, even the dog probably suffers. Everybody's affected, and it's a huge ripple effect. So there's nothing more important as far as I'm concerned. And I have actually stopped practicing category management several years ago when I started realizing what the kinds of work that we all do, what kind of an impact it has to leadership and therefore lots of other people that are around those leaders.
Great. What would you say is your area of expertise?
My mom always said when I was growing up that I was very intuitive, like I had ESP or something. I think we all have different gifts, but I think that's one of my few gifts, is that I tend to have a high level of awareness. Not as much sometimes of myself as I'd like, but I can walk in a room and sort of feel the aura, or I can be meeting with someone and have a connection with them pretty easily. Lumina Spark has been a fantastic instrument for me to leverage that ability or that connection. And I can't tell you how many, I've worked with over 1,000 people. I was going into my website the other day. I'm like, wow. And each person that I have worked with, I just feel like there's this confidential, deep connection that's helped me in a lot of ways to customize team sessions, for example, because I kind of intuit what each person's sort of saying or not saying, but I kind of feel they're experiencing that could be improved. And so I guess that's a one that helps me in this area, certainly.
I have a kind of, you said something that really provoked a question that I have, and I just want to ask you, and if you feel comfortable answering, please do. But you talked about living your truth. And I'm just wondering if you have any tips or advice or just your experience of getting to your truth that you want to share with the community of how you went through that or did that or felt brave enough to do all of that.
Yeah. I'm a very spiritual person. That kind of, I guess, goes along with the comment my mom made of being intuitive. I had a faith like as a kid. So I know that some people struggle with that. And for me, I never struggled with that. And I think knowing that God made me the way I'm made is beautiful. And I think every person should feel that way. And in fact, I had 2 1-hour sessions yesterday, and I decided to end with the page that shows all 24 underlying qualities. And I almost get tears in my eyes now. And when I do this, because I say to them, this is you. You're just beautiful the way you are. I mean, look how many strengths you have, things you enjoy. I'll say to them, I don't know about you, but when I die, I want to be sliding into home plate saying, that was a blast. Not, gee, I was so polished, or gee, I got promoted to vice president. Like at the end of the day, live your underlying self, live your truth. There's a great expression that I share with a lot of people. It's an Asian term called ikigai. It sounds like ikigai. It's IKIGAI, so 3 I's in it. And it's 4 circles overlapping. And in the middle is sort of your sweet spot or your truth, or who you really are and want to be, your true essence. And it's what you love to do, what you can be rewarded or make money, I guess, what you're good at, or what you just, find that those gifts that you're good at that particular area, and what the world needs to be a better place. Mm-hmm. And so for me, thanks to Lumina, I mean, I'm living that ikigai. I found my sweet spot, and it's a combination of so many things. But I think, the process of me, for example, coming out in 99 was just, sweating blood for years, trust me. And it's just been so freeing to continue on that path. And I turned 57 last week, and I'm like, I like the sound of 57. I feel like, you're old enough to have some of that wisdom and sweat a little less about the insecurities, all that. I hope that people who hear this can start that process a lot earlier than I did. So
I think that's so helpful, Laura Lee. Thank you for sharing that. I when you mentioned that, I just thought there's probably a lot of people in our community and those that are, even just coming across this interview that would be really impacted by hearing how you kind of got to that authentic self.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to also ask if you can share with our fellow Lumina practitioners some of your tips or best practices.
Sure. I'll share with you kind of the process. So when I first started, it was really helpful. Becky was a huge help, of course, but I kept rewriting my speaker notes in PowerPoint just to kind of feel through, like, the confidence. Like, for example, when you get on stage, I love doing things like that. But, people, I guess I've read things like, before death, speaking in public's the most daunting, horrible thing for some people. But if you're really well practiced at something and you really feel that confidence, then you can start to loosen up and adjust things. So when I first started, I would encourage people to just do that, talk out loud to yourself, like pretend you're, with a best friend, go through the coaching, go through, some things you could say up front before you dive into the portrait, for example, or before a work session. But then a few years ago, I want to say, Becky, probably 5 years ago or so, I came up with this e-learning. It's about 20 minutes, and it walks through a lot of those materials that I used to do over and over and over and over and over before I would go into the portrait. And I'm finally like, I'm getting tired of my jokes, first of all, saying them over and over again. And why not try to use this? It was this friend of mine worked for a company called Brain Shark, which still exists. And he's let me use it for free for like 5 years, which is super nice. So when people finish this 20 minutes that kind of goes over the basics of Lumina Spark, the basics of the colors, aspects, qualities, how to look at gaps between underlying and everyday, which is a big part of how I spend my time with people. And then once I see this report from Brainshark that they finished that 20-minute e-learning, I set up a 1-hour confidential deep dive with them. And I go over only about 8 pages because there's so much to the portrait that I basically start with the splash. I go to the strengths page with the 5 stars, 5 boxes. And then I go pretty far in to, I believe the next one's like the 3 faces, to see if there's a huge, gap. And I say, there's nothing wrong with that if there is, but it probably means something's going on. You might be new to a company, new to a team, etc. I had a very rich conversation yesterday with someone about that. And that really seems to be a good trigger for folks to say, okay, let's go into some of this tough stuff. So then I go through the gaps with the 4 colors. I go through the gaps with the 8 aspects. I go through the gaps with the 24, touch upon, of course, the overextension, and tell people, my favorite 2 words in the English language when you put them together in terms of overextension is, I'm sorry. I mean, don't you just love people to say like, wow, COVID this, struggles here, this is happening. I've seen these qualities come out, and this crazy Dr. Larson said, these high numbers might come out under these, hard circumstances or when you're having a bad day. And I've seen them. I want to be a better person. And, so people are like, yeah, I am human and it's okay. And then I end with the underlying page, like I mentioned, where, you can let people feel that they can, as I call it, the platinum diamond rule is better than the golden rule. The golden rule is do unto others as you would have done unto you. And the platinum diamond rule is do unto others as they want done unto them. And that's super rough. That's not easy. I mean, it's hard enough to know what we want, let alone. And I usually, encourage people, like even with just introvert, extrovert, like try to think about how you're draining or giving energy, for example, or what they need. And you don't have to stay there forever because you don't want to be a people pleaser and continuously stretch to other people. However, you can suck it up if you're all yellow and you're with a group of blue engineers, you can try to calm it down a little, for example. I mean, so I try to weave that in as much as I can. So hopefully that helped.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you. All right, and I've wanted to ask you lastly, if you could provide a quote or even just your experience with Lumina or the work that you do, if you have a quote that you'd like to share with the community.
Well, I already used the platinum rule one. And I already told you about the Ikigai, but I would just say that this instrument is so far and above anything else I've ever been certified in. The CEO, Stuart, is salt of the earth, one of the nicest people I've ever had the privilege of meeting. He's so smart. Becky's amazing, similar to what I said about Stuart. You, the whole team. I just think that Lumina tries to make practitioners like me feel supported, cared about, loved. There's not a lot of hidden BS that other organizations put you through. It's very affordable. You feel very supported. That you guys would do anything, jump over backwards if you could, to bend over backwards to help us have the tools we need to be successful, the coaching, the monthly sessions, the weekly, anytime you guys are available for us. So I would just say I feel like part of the family. And it's really been just incredibly impactful on my life and my career. So I'm going to use it probably till the day I die. So there you go.
We love to hear that. And thank you, Laura Lee. And you are part of the family. In fact, you are a foundational part of the family. You've been here for so long.